Aloha, welcome everyone to Talk Story with John Waihe'i. Have we got an exciting show for you today? The historic event, the Native Hawaiian AHA just completed its work, well, in terms of drafting a Native Hawaiian Constitution this past Friday. And we got some exciting people for you to talk about for that event. First of all, we have the chairperson of the AHA, Brendon Kaleiaina, Kaleiaina Lee, and Naalehu Anthony.
Aloha.
And Brandon was chairman, and Naalehu was in the communications department. So you know we're expecting great things from you today. All kinds of conversations. So why don't we begin with Brandon? Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the.
Well, about myself personally, I work for Hawaiian Airlines. I've been there for 4 years. That has absolutely nothing to do with anything at the AHA.
Oh, really? Can I get a discount? Does that work?
As far as my background that takes me into the AHA, I'm a lifelong member of the Pearl Harbor Hawaiian Civic Club.
Right.
So all of my training for procedure and all of those types of things all came from, I'm Civic Club, born and raised and trained.
You're technically a parliamentarian.
I am. I'm not a licensed parliamentarian, but I am a trained parliamentarian.
Well, and if people had a chance to see you on television, I guess, they would have seen you conducting the meetings and carrying forth with your training, right?
Well, Governor, I did my best.
Looked pretty good to me. And why are you hanging out with this guy? So, Naalehu, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've been a lifelong member of all the different protests that came up in my life, from everything from Stop 7-Eleven to the Brown eviction to, I think when you were the governor, I think we protested you for a little while there when I was a kid.
I distinctly remember you being in your mom's arms.
I was a little bigger than that, but yeah. And through that came this idea of wanting to make things better for our people. And I'm the vice chair of the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission. You're the chair, and so I kind of got involved with this latest movement. But
you are here voluntarily. There's no.
I am here voluntarily.
No,
not at all. And we don't have a quorum because we're missing one of the members.
So we're not violating
no violation of any of the rules, which would be bad because we're on TV and everyone would know it.
That would not be too good.
Yeah. And so I've been doing that. I've been doing a bunch of communications work with Olivi Television Network and Paliku documentary films and those kinds of things.
So if I want to watch the progress of the Hokulea,
yeah, you actually
I can do it.
You can go to hokulea.com and Olivi TV. That's correct.
So that's kind of what you do. You know what's interesting, Brandon? Both you and Naalehu seem to have been born into the Hawaiian movement.
Yes.
If you've been in the Civic Club your whole life, you must have been involved in Hawaiian affairs from.
Well, actually, Governor, not just through the Civic Clubs. I am Mary Lee's grandson. One of the founders of Protect Kaho'olawe.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I do remember in your case protesting with your grandmother.
I was. It came up actually a lot over the last month in very heated discussions with, for those that don't know, the AHA was very generationally encompassing. Our youngest member was 21 years old. Our oldest member, John Agard, was 90 years old.
Wow.
So we had people that have been fighting for this their whole lives. We have people that have been fighting for this for as long as they've been alive, which is not anywhere near as long as some of the people that were in that room have been fighting for this.
Wow.
So that was very, 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 the first time in my life I've ever seen that kind of generational gap crossed for a fight like this and for an issue like this. And a lot of times, a lot of the older participants would say to the younger people when we were in heated discussions, you weren't there. And they would look at me and go, well, okay, you were there. You were. I was this high.
But you were there.
But I was there. And I marched, and I walked, and I sat.
Well, I think it's terribly exciting that both of you can actually trace the history of this movement. So, okay, the AHA just completed its work last Friday. And as I understand it, we now have a Native Hawaiian Constitution.
We do.
And what is the significance of that? I mean, what does this mean?
I'll let you start.
Well, I mean, for one, it's according to the lawyers, of which we had many at the AHA. It's the first constitution that Native Hawaiians have made and will bring forth to the people since 1887. And so more than a century of work has gone into moving the movement forward through all of the historical ups and downs that we've seen as a people, to come to a moment where we have this group of people coming together, like he said, across generations, across many, many different paths, and saying, okay, let's work together, let's work towards unity, and let's make a document that is representative of what we need in 2016 moving forward towards reestablishing our nation.
You know, it's interesting when you said you had a lot of lawyers there, in the sense that when I was growing up, we used to talk about the need to have Hawaiian lawyers. I think there were like one or two in the entire state. And yet here we are in a convention and we have all these young lawyers. So in a way, the AHA was really the end result of a lot of work that went before. Your mom was in the convention as well, right?
Yeah, there were actually, I think, 3 pairs of parents and kids in the AHA.
That's correct.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
3.
fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, your mom was really proud of you. I got to tell you, I have to break a little bit from the script and tell you, I saw her yesterday, and she couldn't have been prouder. And it was like her work was coming to fruition, you know? And when you mentioned the young lawyers there, I'm sure the law school and Hawaiian studies and everybody who's gone before.
They took a Richardson picture at the end. All the people in
That's
Richardson Law
correct.
School took a picture together.
Really?
Yep.
It was a pretty big picture.
You know, how did it look? I mean, was it a lot of people?
It was a very sizable picture.
It looks like the positive reflection of our people.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I would agree.
You know, I heard, and we're going to get into some of the details of your work, but I heard that in a real way, this constitutional convention ended up being a sort of a young people's initiative.
I think I would categorize it more as the handing off of the torch from one generation to the next.
Really?
I would. There was, like I said, with the generation, all the generations that were there, but you have the people that have been taking this fight on as long as I've been alive, and I'm sure well before I was alive. Lili Kala,
Right.
Opuaku, Emmett Aluli,
Right.
Moani Kiale. You know, all these people, Diviana McGregor, you know, they've been fighting this fight for as long as I've been alive and before I was alive. And then to see all the young people coming in, Jacob Aki, Zuri Aki,
Rebecca Soon.
Rebecca Soon, Makana
By the way,
Paris.
I got to break you into this. I was with Rebecca Soon's mother watching that little, watching on a phone. Can you imagine this on a phone?
How proud was she?
watching? Oh wow! Are you kidding?
Yeah.
But see, and that's the point right there, Governor. That's exactly the point. You know, it was the handing down of this fight that we've been fighting for so long. And now it's time for you young people to step up and take this forward. We're done fighting
And did the young people step up?
in a big way.
Yeah. I mean, the young people, you know, the hana that has to happen every day, the work, there's all of these. You know, this isn't a convention that was staffed with a lot of minions. There were people there to help facilitate, and there was a little bit of technical staff. But towards the end of it, we were printing several thousand pages of copy every day, several thousand pages,
Wow.
because new versions would come up, and we'd have to take it to the floor and give everybody a copy so that everybody felt like they were included. And you see this back room just buzzing with young folks and you know, lawyers and professionals in their own right, who are willing to just do the hana to make sure that all of this moves
That's
quickly.
fantastic. So
I have a great picture of somebody on our communications committee sitting there at the table in the back with 2 laptops open in front of her with her hands crossed like this, typing away on 2
It's
laptops.
incredible.
Yeah.
So not only was this the new generation within the Hawaiian community and the Hawaiian movement, but this is also the new generation period. I mean, this is like people who understand technology, people who can deal with, you know, things that I don't know what I don't even know how to express. Which, by the way, if you have a question, I think you can Twitter us.
Yeah, you can
Twitter us, yeah?
send it to at ThinkTech High, HI dot, or at ThinkTech High at Twitter.
See,
And,
it's great to have
send it all
people
in
who
there.
understand this stuff hanging around with you, you know. Anyway, so you can send us your question. So it was at the cutting edge. You had people sitting around with computers and doing things, and
We
it's
did.
exciting.
We had a great new software that we utilized at the convention called Meeting Sift. The inventor of the software works at UH.
Right.
He's from Norway, right?
Yeah.
Alex is from Norway originally, and it was very useful to us to get immediate feedback from the plenary, to do different sessions with them, trying to find commonality and having them give instant input.
Right.
And with that input, we would see instant results up on the screen, instantaneous. It was amazing.
I was in the '78 Constitutional Convention, you know, and it took at least a day or two before we saw anything instant. But
Yeah, no, stuff got turned around pretty quick.
So, okay, so you got this convention, or this AHA, with a generational bridge. Was there people, where did people come from where? I mean, from all the islands, but I know you also had people from the mainland. Who were some of the participants from outside of Hawaii?
Oh, I'm the worst person in the world to ask. I'm
So there
bad
was
with names.
Darlene Butts came out
From
as-
DC.
Yep, and then as well as Caitlin Iwohi,
From DC.
as well as
Somebody from Sweden too, right? Wasn't there
Bruce,
some guy?
I don't remember
last
Bruce's
name?
last name.
Lambert.
Bruce
Lambert.
Lambert.
Bruce
So you had people from Europe,
Yeah.
from
Yep.
Asia maybe?
Bronson, what was Bronson's last name?
Bronson was hanging out.
Kai Hui.
Yeah, he's been in
Kai Hui.
Vietnam for a while.
He came in from Vietnam,
And then you have people from the continent all over the place.
Washington, Arizona.
You know what's cool too is that you have people from all sides of political thought as well,
Yes.
right? So you have people who and you know you as well as I hate to categorize it in the way in which people categorize it, that there's these two buckets, you know, federal recognition and independence.
Well, we're going to get there, so let's go
Yeah.
there.
Well,
Let's go
and-
there.
and-
Let's
and
go there
those
because we
political-
got a break. We are going to take a little bit of a break, which gets us a chance to organize that. But we want to go there. We can't avoid going there, and that is that there was this expectation that these two buckets, as you describe it, would be clashing. So we'll be right back, right after this break, to hear how that got resolved.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right, and what's good, and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to Think Tech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Welcome back, everybody, to Talk Story with John Waihe'e. We got two exciting young men with me this afternoon. They just completed the Native Hawaiian AHA that ended last Friday, and now we're discussing the question, the elephant in the room. You know, there is this sort of ambiance of people, media, and so forth, talking about the divisions in the Hawaiian community between those that are federal recognition, as you put it, that bucket, those that want independence in that bucket. What happened at the AHA?
Well, first and foremost, the way in which the facilitators approached some of the really large questions and the way in which then leadership was born out of that was critical. That they came in with a ton of information in the first week, and I think some people were unhappy that they took a whole week to do it, but it was critical that they did that because that help to form a baseline of understanding of what federal recognition actually means, because there's a lot of misinformation out there for both sides of that.
Right.
But what it also did was it started to build some pilina, or trust, within the group. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. You know, we had both sides represented during that first week. You know, we had some great speakers that came in. We had, Rebecca Tulsi from the Native Americans on the mainland. We had Zachary Elkins come in for constitutional design. He's a professor at University of Texas, I believe, one of the University of Texas. Then we had Catherine Irons Magallanes come in from New Zealand. She worked heavily with the Maori people and has a lot of background with international law with the UN.
Right.
So we had all the spectrum covered as far as information being given to, it wasn't one side or the other. They brought in experts, worldwide experts, on both for federal recognition and independence model. And they
Melody
came in.
McKenzie came as well
Yeah,
from,
yeah, it's
from
correct.
Richardson.
Melody, right.
To talk about some of the policy that the historical policy that
Professor
we see.
McKenzie.
That's right.
You know,
And-
I talked to her too. She was so proud of her students.
Yeah.
All of you guys should ask her for an A. You know, right now, well, she's still excited. But so all of these people came in and talked to you guys about the facts.
About the facts.
And so what could happen was people could fire all the hard questions towards kind of neutral parties to ask, like, what about these different policies? What about this in international law? What about this in U.S. law? What does this mean to all these different things? Which helped get, I think, a lot of the needed information to be as correct as possible in the room as it kind of went back and forth.
And the important part about the questions that were being fielded by these people are they all were from the outside looking in.
Okay. So they had no stake in
They
that.
had absolutely no stake in this. And for the first time in a long time, some of the answers weren't really any different than answers that we've heard, but the answers were being received. Because it wasn't someone that was sitting in one political camp here within the Hawaiian landscape.
That's
right. My sense is that when the Constitution finally passed in the AHA, the vote was something like 88 to 30, one abstention. But to have that large a number of people voting for it, I suspect that there were individuals that actually crossed
That's right.
out of the buckets.
That's
Right.
correct.
You had common ground. You had people. I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Chris Oliveira, who, by the way, I believe is one of the standouts of the whole experience, because he comes from a community that he grew up in that works really hard to support Native Hawaiians, and he felt that independence was the only way to go, was the only way to get the kind of land and resources that were necessary to move forward as a people. And through this process, he learned that yes, independence may be one of those places that our people want to go, but the first step is these other shorter steps, and that he came all the way over. In the beginning, I remember him, he didn't want to see this process move forward the way it was going. And in the end, he gave one of the most emotional speeches before he voted.
Wow. You know, so we can we say, or are you willing to say that this document is the result of the blending of all of these points of views?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, there's absolutely no doubt about that.
Because anybody who reads it, at least like myself, gets a sense that it laid out a very broad perspective for the Native Hawaiian community. There wasn't really it didn't look like it was captured by any one faction or
It
the
wasn't. And you know, Governor, during the last week of committee work, there were a lot of emotions being expressed, a lot of tears, and the common saying that I would hear in those committees as I would wander in and out of the committee seeing how they were doing was, I didn't get everything that I wanted, and I had to give some things up, but this is what was best for our people.
Wow.
Yep.
That's great.
There were a number of speeches given on the last day before the vote took place that said that what was most important about the AHA was this idea of unity, and that unity has to do with like he said, love of Lahui, but also love of Aina, and that nobody left there feeling like they had flat out won, that everybody gave something and everybody wanted to see unity and to see the process move forward.
Now, unfortunately, you know that there were people who were just opposed to having the AHA happen and actually refused to participate. And many people thought that that type of situation would be polarizing. But it seemed, at least to me, and I did watch a portion of the last day, it seemed to me that there was this generation that just stood up from all sides of the political spectrum and just carried that theme of unity.
Well,
we are one.
And that came directly from everything that we did in the second week. You know, I would encourage everyone out there, you know, all the live streams, they're all archived. You know, go back and watch. After all the information was given in, that whole second week was dedicated to finding commonality within the room. One of the first things I did as chair was I split the room up and I put all the federal recognition people on one side and all the independence people on the other side. No matter what camp of independence they were, I put them on the other side. And I took a lot of heat from the body about that. Why are you trying to split us up? We're trying to come together. And I told them, no, just trust me, you know. So I put them on the side, and the facilitators came up with these exercises for them to, within their own huis on the side, to come up with what was important for them, what they felt was going to be the most important thing in this document we were working on to come out. And we had them list it. And once they listed it, we used that software meeting sift, and we put them all up side by side. And it did a word cloud. So the most common words from both camps came out as big, bold, bright things in the middle. Mm-hmm. And they were all the same from both sides.
See what happens when we take an opportunity to talk to you. I have a theory, and I'm going to say this, and it's probably, you know, you guys don't actually have to respond to this, but I think when all the old guys left the AHA, they took their garbage with them. And it gave a new generation a chance to exercise their aloha aina and aloha lahui and, you know, maybe accomplish something extremely historic.
They also practiced forgiveness
Oh.
out in the open.
Yeah.
You know, when they had their 5 minutes on the mic, people apologized to one another who they hadn't seen in the same room for many decades. Never mind spending a month together, and by the end of it, they wanted to make sure that they were not only giving forgiveness, but asking for forgiveness for all of these long-fought battles that have come up across the spectrum of all the different things that we fight for.
Wow. So what needs to happen now? I guess this document, according to its own words, needs to be ratified, right?
That's true. I think the most important thing, first and foremost, coming out of the gate is education. How do we educate the general public about, one, what happened at the AHA, what took place, and two, about what went into making this document up,
The process
itself.
You know, the process seems almost as important as the actual words of the document, from at least what you're describing.
And I think that the messenger is key as well. So you have presumably 88 individuals who voted to affirm this document. You have, therefore, 88 people from the broad political spectrum, because you didn't have 88 people in the room who support, you know, the idea of federal recognition. You have 88 people in the room who support the idea of aloha lahui and aloha aina. And so what you get is all of them who have their DNA in that document, that they fought for certain phrases. They fought to keep things in, keep things out, and what you get out of that then are these people who will advocate for it in their communities, in their spectrum of who they associate with. And I think that's a really powerful tool, because, again, it's a broad spectrum of people who have a different read, if you will, on why that document came to be, but also that they can show where the hope is in that document moving forward.
Well, there is legitimacy, whether this document achieved legitimacy because of the way it began. and including, there was Kanai'oluwalu, which was state funded to try and get a list of people together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you feel that legitimacy was achieved, and why?
I do. I absolutely do. A lot of people don't like the analogy being compared to the United States of America, but they were the first ones to come out with a constitution. And every constitution since has been held up to that standard. And I really believe that we hold up to that standard. It was a bunch of gentlemen getting together in Philadelphia in 1778 and deciding that this is what we feel is the voice of our people. And they ratified it at that convention, at which point we still weren't the United States of America. It belonged just to that convention.
Right.
They then had to go out and educate the 13 colonies of why this was an important document and why they needed to stand behind it. And that's exactly what we did. A group of Hawaiians.
And are in the process of doing.
Yes, a group of Hawaiians got together, we stood together and said that this document we feel represents the hopes and needs of our people. And now it's our job to go out and get that done.
I love that analogy. It's interesting, but as a part of American history, I don't think people remember or maybe don't know about the fact that a lot of American patriots didn't sign the Constitution, refused to accept it. Patrick Henry being one of the most accepted. So the fact that there are one or two voices who are not necessarily supportive doesn't determine the ultimate legitimacy of the document. And at least in my mind, I think what's going to really tell is the spirit that you bring to all of this,
And I think that, that the fact that there are people who are pushing in the room and outside the room who are pushing to make sure that the document is fair and represents what people from the different parts of the spectrum from the Hawaiian community want is absolutely important. I think it'd be a very different document if half the room walked out feeling like they had gotten everything they wanted, and the other half felt that they were, rejected from this process, and the split was 51-49.
Right.
I think that'd be an entirely different document and an entirely different process. And people worked really hard to advocate that this was as fair a document as possible and something that represented the larger community, which leads to the legitimacy question being answered, right? Because the three of us could sit here and pen a constitution. And anybody can do that, right? On the back of a napkin in a bar, we can write a constitution.
Yeah, you guys can do it faster than me because you know how to use computers. But
Right.
Yes, I understand.
The fact of the matter is, what he's speaking to, this idea of education, this idea of taking it to the people and saying, hey, is this representative of what you want? And breaking it down so that people understand the terminology that was used, and big N versus little n, and big L versus little l, and big S versus
one
little s.
One of the things
right?
that I think people should realize, though, is that a lot of the people who left, who didn't participate, were not opposed to the idea of reforming the Lahui or bringing the Lahui together. They just may have thought that there might be another way. So there is some foundation for some of this. Look, when we come back, we want to get into some of the substance of the document. Okay, just a little bit. We need to do that. So we'll be taking a short break at the moment, and we will be back to discuss the new Native Hawaiian Constitution.
Aloha, I'm Kaui Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on Think Tech Hawaii every Friday at 3 p.m. We address issues of importance for those of us who live here on the most isolated landmass on the planet. Please come join me Fridays at 3 p.m. Mahalo.
Okay, I'm Jay Fidel, that's Ray Starling. We co-host a show called Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. It's really interesting. Ray has a way of unzipping these guys. He asks them these questions and all this stuff tumbles out, and we find out stuff we would never know about without Ray's questions. Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome, Jay. I'm very pleased to be your Ed McMahon every Wednesday at 4 o'clock here on the internet. So you can join us and see what's happening in the energy world, and there is a lot going on. So join us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, come around, be energized, right here on Think Tech. Aloha.
Welcome back, everybody, to Talk Story with John Waihe'i and two exciting guests from the just completed Native Hawaiian AHA. And they are here today to tell us about the work that they have done. So we've got this Constitution now, and people are interested in knowing what's in it, you know. So the first thing I'll take this part and just assure everybody, this is a Constitution that anticipates a democracy.
That's correct.
correct.
I mean, no doubt. And I noticed that, but there's some interesting things in it that I'd like to talk about a little bit. One is that there's a section in here that, well, there are a couple of sections in here. Actually, what's interesting about this document is the classification of rights, you know, which is a little bit different than what happens in the United States Constitution or the state of Hawaii, where we have a Bill of Rights. What we have in this document is the grouping of rights. They're collective rights, indigenous rights,
That's right.
personal rights.
That's right.
What was the thinking behind putting these rights into various categories?
Well, actually, it started off with those three different committees: collective rights, individual rights, and native rights.
So you just got lucky?
And,
or
well,
was
no.
this divine providence?
Those three committees collectively decided that one was not representative, could not be representative without the other. So they came to the body and to the chair and said, we need to be one committee.
You know why I find that whole thing so fascinating? There's this law professor, I actually worked with Professor McKenzie, Brianne.
Swan, Nuhiva Swan.
Yeah, Nuahiva Swan.
Yeah.
And she wrote an article. And she wrote an article about native-based and Hawaiian constitutions. And it was interesting that in that article, she pointed out that the original Constitution was not necessarily equally an original Constitution for the Hawaiian Kingdom that was put out by Kamehameha III. Wasn't necessarily accepted readily by the Hawaiian people. And what they were worried about was that a Bill of Rights by itself may not express all the obligations of government. And I thought it was interesting that, for example, in this Constitution, you talk about the collective right of people to practice their culture, their religion, their language, and that cannot be abridged. You know, you talk about the right of a child being able to have a secure home as actually something that the government has an obligation to do. So this is a little bit more than passing a law like we do in Western culture and saying you shall not abuse children and then going out and enforce it. What this is saying is government has an obligation to do it. And I found that really kind of real Hawaiian in a sense.
Well, and in the Rights Committee, there were great discussion on that particular topic, and what it boiled down to was our values as Hawaiians. That
Right.
we were all raised that the keiki belonged to us, and we had an obligation as a family to take care of this keiki. And if I'm sure I'll get emails tonight if I'm mistaken, but I really believe that committee saw it that way, that we were forming a new family with this Constitution and this new nation. And they felt then that we all collectively, not just the keiki, but we all collectively were going to be the keiki of this new ohana. Those of we can stand up for ourselves because we have voting rights and everything, but those they don't have that right. So our new ohana has an obligation to take care of those keiki.
See, that is so reflective of what the people over 100 years ago told the monarch. They actually came in, over 1,000 Native Hawaiians signed a petition, came before Kamehameha III, and told him he needed to be cognizant of those kinds of obligations. It's not just, it wasn't only thou shalt nots, it was thou shalt do. And I thought this Constitution, in a way, was to try to express that. And I really invite everyone to read it. because it's a really interesting document. Now, one part of that, which I want to go into, is you quote the law of the splintered paddle, okay? Which we all grew up being with if you grew up in Hawaii or had any kind of thing, right? And the law of the splintered paddle is also included in the Hawaii State Constitution, but not in its full text. You see? And we talk about the part where the king said, Kamehameha the Great said, you know, that the people, women and children could lie on, but we don't talk about the, what we don't mention is the beginning language of that statement, which is so beautiful, you know. And when he talks about to my people honor the divine and respect all people, great and humble. You know, so it's not just about policing. It's about how you treat each other. You know, and I don't know. I mean, I find that a much fuller proposition than what we currently have in our state constitution.
Well, you also notice that there's Hawaiian words used specifically across the document. So, you know, the original text of the law, the splintered paddle, maka Hawaii, but you also, there was this great discussion across all groups about when to use English words and when to use Hawaiian words, and that some words you wouldn't translate, like iwi kupuna.
Yes.
You know, the idea that what specifically is this idea of aina, you know, and so you have it actually bracketed that aina can mean land, but it can also mean other things depending on how you...
Ancestor.
That's right. So you look at it from those different ways, and that the Hawaiian word became more appropriate than trying to find some kind of English text that would fit it.
Kuleana.
Yes.
The use of the word kuleana in this, maybe give us some insight into what that Hawaiian expression actually means. I mean, as something richer than this is your responsibility.
Well,
Yeah,
the man
absolutely.
who speaks the language.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the idea of kuleana, not only this, like we take it at face value of responsibility, but it's also this privilege, right?
Right.
And that the idea that there's a duality to that, that the kuleana that you take on, whether it's taking on, you know, the family property as a privilege, is also this great burden, and that responsibility doesn't encapsulate it enough. And so kuleana across the document used in here, I think, is a better word to help to kind of form really what the thought and the intent was from the committees moving forward, that you couldn't have done with a singular word like responsibility or burden.
You know, I would really actually invite not only Hawaiians, but non-Hawaiians to read this document. Because, you know, one of the problems, one of the concerns that I've actually seen written about the idea that if Native Hawaiians had their own government, started to do things, that this would be a way for people to actually misuse the Aina. That we would go, the nation would go out and start making crazy leases and developing more Waikikis and doing all. And if you read this, what you have here is a real, well, I don't know, but in my mind, I sense a real love for Hawaii. Not about, you know, misusing it, but there's this kind of kuleana, respect, how you treat water, how you treat each other. It's really interesting, you know, and how did that all come about?
A lot of discussion, a lot of, I hate to use the word because it was so unwell-liked during the AHA, but a lot of exercises in getting everyone to realize that although we all come from different backgrounds, although we all come from different political ideologies, we all had some very core values that we all held in common. Aloha Aina.
Yeah, Aloha Aina is
It's a big one. And it didn't matter if you lived in Washington, D.C., or Seattle, or Maui, or Kauai, or in the middle of Honolulu. We all could relate to that. Every single one of us that were there.
Well, it's also a lesson that we could probably teach our state government. I'm not going to get into any of those things that they're doing recently that, makes Aloha Hawaiiana look a little tarnished. But they could take a lesson. We could take a lesson from this, And, well, I got to ask you this question because you got 45 people coming to this legislature, and you've done this. One of the tough things that happened in the 1978 Constitutional Convention when we were creating OHA was how do we provide representation for people from all the various islands and so forth. And you came out with this formula that is really interesting. And I know that that's not necessarily, was your particular kuleana, but the idea of crossing land and population, which is sort of similar to saying Senate and House of Representatives, but not quite, because it really is a way of balancing islands and still keeping in tune with making sure there was equal representation.
So, first of all, that debate is still going on, even though we have a document. There's still emails flying back and forth about whether or not that was the right choice, and only time will tell. And luckily, I think that there's ways to modify this document later on. But what I saw with that committee, and Rebecca Soon was one of the facilitators as the chair of that committee. They were going back and forth about all of these different ways that you could divvy it all up, right? Whether it was, I think there were a couple of questions, right? The first one was that, what do you do about other people not living in Hawaii?
Right.
So how do you deal with that? Because that population is large, and I think that there was this rub, if you will, about well, how much do they get to decide, external to Hawaii? The other challenge is obviously the Oahu population, because you have all these Native Hawaiians living on Oahu. And so Oahu, like it is now in regular life, has much more kind of gravity than some of the other islands.
Right.
So they tried to balance that out so that it would flatten some of those peaks and valleys to give, I think, a more flat playing field for everyone to be able to participate in.
Well, this is a very exciting document, and obviously from just talking with you, you had an experience that you're going to treasure for the rest of your lives. Was there anything else that you may want to? What happens now? Is this something that is somebody going to go out and encourage people to read it, participate in it, know about it, or are we just going to sort of stand back?
Oh, absolutely not. There have been exerted efforts that started immediately as to starting to lay the foundation for plans to how are we going to take this out into our communities, how we're going to get not just the schools or the civic organizations who are typically engaged in this type of process, but how we're going to reach the Hawaiian who lives up Omao Road on Homestead, who didn't even know there was an AHA going on and doesn't really know about any of this, but this relates to him.
Exactly.
Very much so. So how are we going to go reach those people and tell them and educate them about what has happened for them and their future?
And I know for many Hawaiians that there is a statement in here saying that participation in the Native Hawaiian government doesn't in any way negate their roles as United States citizens. Because as we know, there are a lot of people that would love to support a Native government that will never, ever give up their United States citizenship. So for people like that, there's a place here. For people who want independence, that leaves that option open someday in the future. Meanwhile, there is room enough for us to go and get more for more benefit for all people. So I want to thank both of you. I really do. I have enjoyed having you here. This has been an exciting time for me. And mahalo everyone for tuning in to Talk Story with John Waihe'i. Read the Native Hawaiian Constitution. You're going to learn a lot about where the Hawaiian community is.